What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Busters. This is my first time actually doing an intro, so let's see if I fuck this up. My name is Will. This is my co-host Eric. How you doing today, Eric?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm glad to be here. Glad to talk some running backs today.
Hell yeah, bro. Most exciting position in fantasy, unless you like wide receivers, but we're doing that one next, so stay tuned
Out here.
because that one's coming up. Uh, Today we are going to just be handling our top 20 running backs in fantasy. This should be a good episode because I think a lot of our stuff isn't going to line up on this one. So I'm excited to hear Eric's list. I'm sure he's excited to hear mine. And, without further ado, we can go ahead and jump right into it. So, this is the one that I think Eric and I are going to agree on. It's going to be the consensus number one running back in fantasy, Mr. Christian McCaffrey.
At least they should be.
Yeah, he should be the consensus number one. A lot of people like to let injuries and stuff like that get in the way, and while that is a good factor to take care of, it's something you can't plan for in fantasy. You can't plan on anybody staying healthy a whole year. You can't plan on anybody not, getting hurt. What you have to do is look at the numbers and just kind of hope that the numbers are going to be on your side. And with Christian McCaffrey, the numbers are about as good as they could possibly get for any player, really in the history of fantasy football. So, Eric, if you want to get any more into that.
Yeah, I mean, he's just the GOAT. Like you said, in the history of fantasy football, one of the best we've ever seen. He's the total package. Doesn't matter who his quarterback is, how good or bad his team is, because he's not game script dependent. Since 2018, he's averaged 8.1 targets per game. That's the best by any running back since 2014, and better than most wide receivers that are, outside the top 12. And to further drive that same stat home, this is another stat that comes from Josh Larkey on Twitter. C-Mac had 116 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2019. That's over 15 fantasy points per game just from receiving alone, which was better than all but 11 receivers in total fantasy points that year. So, like, if you take away all of his rushing work, he's still a dominant RB1. Um, I'm not worried about the injuries like you were talking about. I'm not in the business of predicting those. He was healthy for all 3 years of his college career, didn't have a single injury, was healthy all the way up through 2019, or sorry, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And the injuries that he's had so far in these past 2 years haven't been like significant ligament tears. They haven't been repeat injuries to the same parts of the body. So I don't see any need to worry about him from an injury perspective. I think he's set up to be the RB1 again this year.
Yeah, and there is such things as just bad luck or even just freak accidents, which can happen. And when Christian McCaffrey, but the fact is, when Christian McCaffrey is on the field, he has the potential to carry your team to a win every week. So with that being said, Christian McCaffrey, number one running back, probably won't go as the number one running back, depending on your league or who it is with the first pick. But he should be the number one running back. And then we're gonna get
Yeah.
into number two, which I'm sure with these top five things are gonna be pretty much the same players in different orders. For me, for number two, I have Jonathan Taylor, which, as Eric's nodding right now, I'm sure he also does. He just since 2020, I believe since 2020, he's had more than a 70% snap share, so he's on the field all the time. He led the league last year in red zone touches. Now, sure, Derrick Henry was hurt, but the fact that he got 92 red zone touches is kind of crazy. And the fact that they are giving him the opportunity. The Colts should be a way better team than they were last year with adding Matt Ryan to the team because they're going to have that level of consistency. And we can probably hope that Jonathan Taylor's going to get more receiving work because Matt Ryan is a quarterback who likes to check down the running backs.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I pretty much had written down like everything that you just mentioned. I want to emphasize you mentioned 92 red zone touches. He had 89 red zone carries, which was more than the next closest by over 40 carries. That's absolutely absurd. Like that's unheard of type numbers. I'm sure that's going to come down, right? Like his total touches, his red zone touches are probably going to come down, but not by a lot. He's still the lifeblood of this offense. Still going to run through him. I think this is easy RB2, Jonathan Taylor.
Agreed. Very agreed. And Eric, I want to let you go ahead with the third one.
Yeah, so we'll see if we start to disagree here. Not sure. I have Austin Eckler. Um,
Okay.
he's in a tier with three guys for me. So they're kind of interchangeable. It's tough for me to decide between them, but he had a fantastic year last year. He had 20 total touchdowns, 12 of which came on the ground. I do expect that to regress. His previous career high in rushing touchdowns was only three. So I do see that coming down. He actually said himself in an interview recently that he's looking for another running back to come in and take some touches off of his body. He wants to prolong his career. He's hoping to play for like 5 or 6 more years, is what he's been saying. The issue with that, though, is that the Chargers just haven't brought in another talented enough running back worth taking those touches away from him so far. I think they hoped to do that by drafting Isaiah Spiller this year, but so far, reports out of camp are that Josh Kelly has a firm hold on the RB2 spot, and he's been no more than a jag so far in his career. So I think Eckler's going to have to still shoulder a heavy workload going into 2022.
I can agree with that sentiment, but my number three is Dalvin Cook. Just because I feel like Dalvin Cook has been that guy that the Minnesota Vikings have leaned on a lot. He's been their best player on the team. Now, will he be the best player this year with Justin Jefferson, how they want to use him? That's still up for grabs. But the fact is, they've showed us that they want to run this offense through Dalvin, but they also want to take some of his volume down to try to preserve him throughout the season this year. But the one thing that really made me feel like Dalvin doesn't deserve a downgrade, even though he's still going to be a top five running back in fantasy, I think he's a number three because last year he had a lot of bad touchdown luck. He had the fourth most goal line carries, and he was only able to turn three of those into touchdowns, and that's sort of unheard of. And he only finished the season with 6 touchdowns. The prior 2 years, he averaged 16 touchdowns per season. So to say that it's going to come up from that number, I can be pretty certain it's going to come up. It may not reach that 16 ceiling again, but the fact that he only had 6 last season and was still a top option when he was on the field kind of shows that there is still a high ceiling for Dalvin Cook. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree with almost everything you said there. He's in my top five. Spoiler alert, I have him at five, so I'll talk more about him when I get to that. But my number four is Derrick Henry. He's just an absolute freak in nature. The guy's huge. It's crazy. Prior to the foot injury last year, he was the RB1 by a mile, averaging 23 points per game through the first 8 weeks, which was more than 2 points per game greater than what Jonathan Taylor was averaging for the season. And he was also on pace for over 40 targets last year, which I believe would have almost doubled his previous career high. So he's shown more workload in that area. But that's like also something that you could say is a negative, just the crazy workload that he's had over these past few years. In 2019, he had 303 carries. 2020, he had 378. And last year, before the injury, he was on pace for 465. So it's up to you whether you think he can hold up, all that wear and tear, all those touches. So far, it's been a bad bet to bet against him, and I just can't get myself to do it. So I am worried about this offense taking a downgrade a little bit with A.J. Brown leaving, with their offensive line grading out worse than it did last year. But, man, he's still the king, and I think he's still going to eat.
yeah, I agree with that. He's also at my number four. I volume is king when it comes to Derrick Henry. The only thing that I am worried about for Derrick Henry is how his life looks after football. But while he's on the field, nothing in his life has proven anything but he's going to be the guy that they run an offense through. And why wouldn't you? Because he is a monster. And I believe he was the RB1 in fantasy for like, what, 4 more weeks after he was hurt?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, overall.
He was
his
working.
Points, it's crazy.
He was working at an alarming rate. So to say that they're going to be running through him again, we can almost only assume that their receiving weapons have. I'm not going to say they've taken a downgrade, but the fact of the matter is they have taken a downgrade until we see how well this receiver core works, or even how Ryan Tannehill plays, or Malik Willis when he starts over in Week 10. But Derrick Henry is the guy in Tennessee. He is that team. And last year, he was a lot of people's fantasy teams. A lot of teams, when they lost Derrick Henry, they were very different after that because of what he was able to do that season. If y'all can't hear, my boy Zay is in the background. He actually had Derrick Henry on his team. He was one of those guys. He's that guy who can elevate your team to that next level and make you a contender. So if he's on and he stays on the field the whole season, and he's able to up his receiving work, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't take Derrick Henry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're pretty much in agreement there. Both have him at 4. You just talked about Dalvin Cook up at 3. I have him down at 5. And I agree with pretty much everything that you said. Just to kind of expand upon that, you talked about his lower TD rate. In the past 2 years, his touchdown rate was at 4.3% and at 4.7%. And that dropped down to 2.1% last year. So I definitely expect positive touchdown regression coming for Dalvin. And I think that this offense projects to be even more potent than it has been in years past. So more red zone opportunities and stuff like that could definitely lead to a touchdown bump for him. My only real worry, and the reason that I have him down at 5, is the shoulder. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He's dislocated his shoulder on multiple occasions now. I'm getting a lot of this information from FB Injury Doc on Twitter. He says that he's redislocated his shoulder post surgically 2 times now, and the chances of redislocation along with subsequent surgery go up with every dislocation that he has. So
Mm-hmm.
normally I would just advise to draft Cook early and then take Alexander Madison late, and you're good to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
But reports out of camp so far are saying that the new rookie Ty Chandler is potentially eating into that role of handcuff behind Dalvin. So if there's not a clear handcuff, it scares me to take somebody that risky that early. But
Mm-hmm.
I do think that he has, RB1 upside if he can stay healthy.
No, that's completely fair. And my 5, it's funny because we just flip flopped the two. I have Austin Eckler at my 5. And I
Yeah,
agree with all the sentiments you had, especially, and I want to add the fact that he is, besides McCaffrey, probably one of the best receiving running backs that we've seen in a long time. There was a point where he was on the Chargers with Melvin Gordon in the backfield, and he would still line up at receiver, and he was still putting up RB2, RB3 numbers. So that's the kind of ceiling, well, not RB2, overall RB2. You know what I
right.
mean? But
Yeah,
he's got a hell of a lot of potential. The only thing that downgrades him a little bit for me is just because that offense is as good as it is, but at the same time that's an upgrade because they should be in the red zone a lot. They should be scoring a lot. It's just a matter of who the ball is going to go to, but Austin Eckler, he has his role. He's been cemented as one of the guys on this team and he's going to get his touches. So, he's another guy with RB1 potential and it's like Eric said earlier with the having the tier of running backs in the same tier. So I'm guessing your tier was what was your tier exactly?
Eckler, Henry, Cook.
Yeah. So if you go with any one of those over the other, I can't be mad at you for any of that because all of them have that kind of ceiling to them where they could be the RB1.
Yeah, yeah, totally agreed. And then when it gets to 6, for me, this starts a new tier of running backs, 6 through 9. Again, guys that are kind of interchangeable. I wouldn't be mad at you for drafting one ahead of the other, but for me, definitely leading the way at 6 is Saquon Barkley. We talked a lot about him in our last episode in the NFC East divisional breakdown. Um, and one of the things that we mentioned is that if you're high on CMC, you should be high on Saquon Barkley, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like health isn't a concern for me with him. His injuries have been fluky, non-repetitive, not to the same parts of the body. He's 2 years removed from the ACL tear now, and he's just ready to smash. Um, uh, Brian Dable is coming in as the new head coach. He's reshaped this offense to be much more creative and forward-thinking than the previous regime was. Saquon's going to get a ton more receiving work. He's actually been split out wide quite a bit in training camp and in the preseason. I just think that this is the best coaching staff that he's ever had, the best offensive line that he's ever had, and it's the healthiest he's been since 2019. And what's even better is that he's being drafted like ADP wise as the RB14. So like you don't have to take him as RB6 where I have him ranked. You can wait a little bit, but don't wait too long because I think he's about to blow up this year.
Yeah, he will get scooped up, and I do also have him at my 6 as well. He's that guy that
Go.
he deserves that respect. It's just I think a lot of people like to forget just because he had 2 down years, one coming off an ACL tear, the other one dealing with ankle injuries, which, if people aren't aware, a lot of people get ankle injuries after coming off an ACL tear because they're trying to compensate for that knee that isn't fully healed up. So the fact that this is one of the years where he's coming back and he has said himself, this is the first time I felt like I'm at a 100%. And even last year, he said several times, I'm not at 100%. I'm somewhere around 60 to 70%. The fact he is at 100%, a lot of people forget that Saquon was a generational talent coming into the draft. And it's just, I don't know, maybe it's the Giants, maybe it's just recency bias, but he deserves to be the RB6. But like Eric said, he's not going at that rate. So he is going to be a steal for somebody in the draft. You just want that to be you. Yeah.
It's gonna be a steal for me.
Hey, we'll find out. We'll find out how it shakes
That's
out.
true. I got to compete with you for him, I guess.
Uh-huh. We'll find out. But just rolling over from 6, gonna roll right into 7. My number 7 is Joe Mixon with the Bengals. I just think he's on that great team. It's just a high-powered offense, and when you have an high-powered offense, you kind of got to take the running backs, especially if they're proven to be elite when the offense is not elite. Because Joe Mixon has been one of the top options in fantasy football for the last few years. He's had a couple down years, had some injury issues. A lot of people kind of remember Joe Mixon as being more injury prone than he is. He's really only missed like a handful of games in the last few years, and to be honest with you, all of these running backs in the top 10, they've all missed a few games in the last 2 years, so it's just
Yeah.
it's a moot point to try to say that Joe Mixon is injury prone. It's just not true. It's just not a true narrative. Now, he doesn't get a lot of receiving work. Me and Eric have kind of gone back on this a lot. Towards the end of last season, down that stretch, he was getting a lot more receiving work, and hopefully that does carry into the season. And if that does, that's only going to raise the ceiling on Joe Mixon. But where his floor is at, I think it's right here at the RB7 at least. So, who do you have for 7?
Yeah.
Eric?
So I like what you said about Joe Mixon. He's also in this tier for me, but at 7 is another, kind of above ADP. I wouldn't call it a hot take, but I have Leonard Fournette, Uncle Lenny up here at 7.
Oh, Lombardi
Um,
Lenny.
Marty Lenny, man. Yeah, I'm huge on him this year. Last year he was third in the league in targets with 84, only behind Austin Eckler and Najee Harris, which hadn't necessarily been a staple for him in his career, like as a receiving back, but he showed that he's more than capable of that last year. Tom Brady kind of brought over a similar philosophy that he had with the Patriots over to the Bucks, in that the short passing game can be an extension of the running game, right? And I think that translated into fantasy gold for Fournette. And also, he proved to be Brady's most trusted target out of the backfield, which I don't see changing much this year, even though they did bring in the receiving back from ASU, Rashad White. I do think he's, just from a talent perspective, probably the superior pass catcher, but it's going to take a while for him to improve as a pass blocker and earn the trust of Brady. So I don't really see him pushing Lenny off the field anytime soon. Um, and he's, like I said, another guy that's being undervalued in drafts right now. He's currently going as the RB13. And I'm going to be trying to scoop him up as my RB2 everywhere this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment. I have him a tad bit lower, but I do think that his value has fallen just because of all this, him showing up to training camp and all these rumors saying he was 260 and this and that, and it's like, come on, guys. He knows how to get in shape. He's in Tampa Bay. They've already said it's no longer an issue, and he's just gonna be the guy. He's gonna be the bell cow for that team. So I'll talk a little bit more about Leonard Fournette later, but just rolling into the number 8 spot, newly moved up in my rankings, is gonna be Alvin Kamara. So
Like it.
Alvin Kamara, as we all know, he's had some legal issues. He likes to jump people outside of bars for some reason, even though he's a millionaire. I'll never understand that. But the facts of the matter here is that Alvin Kamara is a talent. This Saints offense has actually gotten a lot better, so it's not like everyone knows every single play is going to Alvin Kamara anymore, because they've got Michael Thomas back. They've got Chris Olave in the draft. They've got Jarvis Landry. They got Jameis back at quarterback. It's just the team has taken, at least on paper, it's taken a step up from where it was last year, because, to be honest with you, they were kind of abysmal. And even last year, in the bad situation that they were in, Alvin Kamara, when he was on the field, he was still at least a decent fantasy option. I'm not going to say he was an RB1, but he was still doing really, really, really well for his situation, especially in terms of receiving. I actually didn't know before last year, before I started looking at him, because it was the first time I had him on my team. I didn't know just how much he really relied on the passing game and actually getting receiving work. He's not the best rusher in the league, but he still is able to be an above average runner in the league, but he is an elite pass catcher. And I think with the way that this offense is kind of reined in Jameis, I think they're going for a lot of the shorter stuff. I think Alvin Kamara is going to get his work because they're going to want the offense to kind of flow through him. So at number 8, yeah, I've got Alvin Kamara.
I like it. I like it a lot. He's definitely somebody that I've considered moving up further in my rankings. I do have him in a tier below right now, a little bit lower than you, but I agree with a lot of what you said. For me, in my number 8 spot, it's Joe Mixon, who you already talked about. And again, most of what you said is exactly what I was going to go with. I foresee a lot of the same from last year for Joe Mixon coming into 2022. We talked about him in our divisional breakdown as well, with Zach Taylor being more of a run heavy coach and letting game scripts kind of dictate his play calling on a team that's as good as they're going to be and leading as often as they're going to be. I think they're going to continue to run the ball heavily, and that's just going to be to the benefit of Joe Mixon. Even though he's not, hugely used in the passing game, I think he's still got plenty of upside with the amount of red zone opportunities he's going to get. But I don't want to be too repetitive. Everything you said, totally agree with. We can move on to number 9.
Okay, who you got?
I got DeAndre Swift.
Okay.
I don't know if this is hot takey for you. I'm just really high on him this year. I've got some stats here. This stat is coming from Ian Hartitz on Twitter. Swift was one of only 5 running backs to score 9 PPR points per game just from receiving alone in 2021. And I know these rankings are based off of half PPR, but I just really like that stat, so I had to throw that one in there. Also, another narrative that I'm hearing a lot about more recently is that the Lions have added Deuce Staley to their coaching staff as the running backs coach. He's coming in from Philadelphia, really respected running backs coach. And it seems like the beat reporters are saying that his influence on Swift has been tremendous. And he's improving as a pass blocker. He's improving just the way that he prepares for games and health, like the way that he prepares physically. So hopefully he can stay on the field more. He just came out recently and said that his goal is to hit 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards this season. Him saying that doesn't mean a whole bunch, but I think he's probably one of only maybe 2 or 3 players in the league that I think are capable of hitting those numbers. And if he can stay healthy, I think the sky is the limit for him this year.
I also have DeAndre Swift at number 9.
Hey,
Actually,
let's go. Let's go.
one thing that I really like to hear in the offseason, that was kind of news that they gave us during training camp and stuff, is that DeAndre Swift said one thing he was working on this season was being able to play through injury, which is kind of, it's a double-edged sword because you also want your players to be as healthy as they can get, but at the same time you want them on the field and you want them to play. So this just kind of means like if there's that little lingering, nagging little issue, he will do his best to kind of work through it, and that's something that I do take as a huge bump up for him. Just that, just overall tenacity and being able to get back and stay on the field. There's a lot of those warrior players that like will just come out week after week, and even still, like they're still playing as the season goes along. They're gonna keep getting healthier and healthier throughout the weeks, even though they are playing hurt. So stuff should keep going up as well. DeAndre Swift also a great receiver out the backfield. They said that it was recently like kind of rumored that he was gonna be his workload was gonna be limited a little bit more going into this season. But after watching sort of the preseason game, he had 4 rushes and a touchdown, so I can't really, you know, he's still a big part of this offense, and they still want to get him out there. And the fact that they did use him as much as they did on that first drive, and that he was the one to score that touchdown, means he does have the trust of the coaching staff and of the team. So that's great things that you want to see. And like you said, the sky is the limit with this guy because when he is on, he is one of the best running backs in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned them wanting to limit his workload. I don't think it's necessarily that. It's just we saw it last year, right, where Jamal Williams was definitely involved. He's going to be involved again, but that's not a surprise. That's not scaring me. DeAndre Swift, even with Jamal Williams involved in the offense on a points per game basis, was still fantastic last year.
Yep.
He missed a lot of games, so that's what you want to see improve. You want to see him stay on the field, but if he can keep that up, it doesn't really matter if he's working in a committee, the majority of the touches over Jamal Williams. So I like that we're in lockstep there at number 9.
Hell yeah.
That leads me into number 10, and this is the start of a new tier of running backs for me, and I have Najee Harris. This is one I've been kind of going back and forth on between him and Alvin Kamara, who you had up at 8, I believe. Mm-hmm. Najee is just the volume king, right? He's going to get so many touches. He had over 300 carries last year, and I believe over 90 receptions last year as well. I do expect that to come down just a little bit,
I hope.
but it's going to be hard for them not to rely on him again, considering the quarterback situation that's going to be going on there this year. Another thing to touch on with that quarterback situation is that I don't know that his receiving volume is going to be as high as with Big Ben and the noodle arm. Like he had to check down all the time. Mr. Trubisky's got a bigger arm. He's more mobile. He's probably not going to check it down quite as much. So that's why I have him lower than RB2 where he finished last year. But I still think that the volume is going to be there. He's still a fantastic running back. He's an explosive guy. He's capable of catching passes. So it's hard for me to bump him down much lower than 10.
Okay. So at my number 10 spot, I have Leonard Fournette. And that's, agreeing with a lot of the sentiments that you had earlier. I think people are really down on Leonard Fournette right now for some reason, and it doesn't really make sense to be down on Leonard Fournette. He's proven that he's the guy here on this team. The team has done nothing but show you that he's the guy. He's in shape. He's ready to go. And just to not keep reiterating everything that Eric said, because everything he said was completely spot on, Leonard Fournette is the guy that Tom Brady trusts. And I don't think people value how important that is going into the season. If Tom Brady has a guy, that is the guy. This coaching staff doesn't really have an option otherwise. Tom Brady is essentially the offensive coordinator for this team in terms of who's going to get used and who's going to be the people that the offense flows through. So Leonard Fournette, he's an easy top 10 option for me, and I wouldn't even be mad at having him. You had him in the 8 spot, right? Or 7?
7.
You had him
Yeah.
at 7. So I'm not mad at that either. It's just he's a top 10 option in fantasy because the team believes in him and they're going to give him that work. And rolling over into 11 just because it did match up as well as it did, that's where I have Najee, just because he's another one of those super volume is king type of guys. And going into this season, his receiving is going to go down because Big Ben was hot ass last year. He couldn't push the ball more than 10, 15 yards down the field, which is crazy to see from an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
But so the check down should come down, but I believe his rushing upside is going to go up a lot more because I don't know if you watched a lot of Steelers games last year. The box was just about always stacked because they
Oh
knew
yeah.
Big Ben could not get the ball downfield. So against this team with guys at least like Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph, whoever the fuck it is they end up picking, they should at least be able to get the ball down the field and give defenses different looks than 10-yard slants or wide receiver screens or dump offs to the running back. So they shouldn't be able to stack the box every play against this guy. And he's done nothing but prove since college that he is a great running back. He was just not in the best position for a rusher last year. But I think going into this year, we should see a big uptick in rushing upside. Receiving might come down a little bit, might even stay the same because last year he proved he can be an elite receiving option in fantasy. He can be the guy that just gets the dump offs every play. But it remains to be seen how this quarterback play is, which is why I have him outside of my top 10. I know a lot of people have them inside the top 10, but that's at least my reasoning for it. I think rushing upside is there for sure now. But receiving might come down a little bit. But in the end of the day, it should kind of even out to him being a similar player, if not a better player than he was last year.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of really good points there. That's something that I forgot to mention when I was talking about him is that he did face a ton of stacked boxes because they just couldn't stretch the field, and that's definitely going to change this year. So I agree with you there. Leads me into my number 11, who is Alvin Kamara, and I believe at this point our top 11 consist of the same players, just in different orders. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So we're fairly close, but for me, I echo a lot of the same things that you said about Alvin Kamara. It doesn't sound like the suspension is going to be coming down this year. Not something that we really have to worry about. Another stat that I saw and liked from Joe Orrico on Twitter about his fantasy finish last year is that he finished last in touchdowns per touch per game amongst the top 15 running backs in 2021, but he still finished as the RB8 and he
Mm-hmm.
only played 13 games. He's still the same crazy talented player, still super efficient. I do have some concerns with him. That's why I have him down at 11. I don't think he's going to get nearly the same target volume that we've seen from him in years past with Drew Brees.
Mm-hmm.
Jameis just isn't going to check it down as much. That's another thing, not just speculation, but from Nick Underhill, a really respected beat reporter for the Saints, he said the same thing that the days of Alvin Kamara as an 80 reception back are over. So I expect his receiving work to come down a little bit, but I still expect him to be really efficient. And I think that part of that can be offset with an increase in rushing work as well.
Hmm.
And so I think that his upside is still probably within the top five running backs. I just wonder what the Saints offense is going to look like with Jameis at the helm, and what he can do with less receiving work than in years past.
No, I agree with that. I think, like you said, his receiving is going to come down because it's not really the player that Jameis is. He's a gunslinger. He's going to go out there, and if he can push the ball down the field, he can. What I do like and what I hope to see from the Saints is them using Alvin Kamara in more of a slot role as well, pushing him out to the outsides of the field because he's shown that he is capable of playing there too. So I'm excited to see Alvin Kamara. I'm excited to see the Saints team, honestly, just to see how they turn out. But you guys know I'm a big Jameis fan, man. I can't get away from Jameis, man.
Yeah. So that puts us on to running back 12.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's going to be Aaron Jones.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of turnover for this Green Bay offense with Devontae Adams leaving. And everybody's trying to figure out where the targets are going to go, whether it's going to be Alan Lazard, whether it's going to be the new rookie Christian Watson, or training camp buzz around Romeo Dubs, whatever. I think that a lot of it is probably going to go to the running backs with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. That's something that they've said throughout the offseason. They know that that's probably their most talented position group outside of just Aaron Rodgers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he's going to get a ton of receiving work. I think he could see close to 100 targets, probably around 80 receptions, which is going to put him near the league lead. Even if he's splitting work with AJ Dillon, like you said with Alvin Kamara, I think this is another guy that we could see them split out wide, use more creatively, get that depth of target up to make those touches even more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And his efficiency as a runner hasn't dipped with age either. He's still been incredibly efficient. So even if he's not touching the ball a ton as a runner, he's still gonna get his and do a lot with him. So he's my number 12.
I like that. I agree with everything you said right there. My 12 is a little different though. I'm going with Zeke at my 12.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, just because I do feel like the volume is still there. The team trusts him. The team loves him. There have been reports from the coaches that he's taking that step back up again. We're gonna see some of the old Zeke, and trust and believe me when I tell you, I don't believe that. But I do think that if he even comes back to being, I think that we talked about this yesterday, or not yesterday, but well, yeah, it was yesterday when we talked, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. When we talked about the NFC East and our breakdown of that, I was pretty high on Zeke. If he can get back to just 75% of the player that he was his rookie second year in the league, and they give him the volume that they have. Plus, they're gonna have some targets open in the receiving game because they have lost a good amount of targets through Michael Gallup being hurt, through Amari Cooper leaving, through James Washington also getting hurt. I see an uptick in receiving work coming from Zeke as well. So if he gets even somewhat back to that, I think he's going to be an elite fantasy option, including the fact that last year he was also playing with the torn PCL for a majority of the season since, like, I believe week 4. So it's just something that I can be at the very least higher than Zeke than I was last year, even with the Tony Pollard, because they've proven to us at this point Tony Pollard is not the guy, at least not yet. They've got no reason to. They've invested all of this into Zeke, and Zeke hasn't really shown a whole lot of. He really hasn't shown a lot of regression. He's been less of a player, but in terms of the stats that he puts up and just how much volume that he gets in the team, he is still a very similar player than he was, prior years in the NFL. So for me to say that Zeke is going to take a dip to where he is now, I think he's ranked somewhere like the RB 17 or 16. I don't think he should be there. That's where he's going to go. So he will be a good draft value, but I think that he does deserve a little bit more respect than he is getting now.
Yeah, I definitely think the hate has gone too far on Zeke. I think that the opportunity is there for him for sure. He is a little bit lower on my list for me. I'm closer to ADP on him than you are, but I'll get to that when we get around to that ranking spot. For me at 13, I have Javonte Williams. Um, I've kind of changed my tune on him as this offseason has gone on. I was in the camp of Melvin Gordon playing a pretty big role, similar to last year, it being close to like a 55-45 split. And I was worried about that because if the volume isn't there, then it's tough to really like push for him to be a high draft capital or somebody that you take with high draft capital. But as the offseason has gone on, we've heard more and more reports out of camp saying that this new coaching staff wants to make Javonte Williams the guy. Even so far as today, I just got it like an hour ago that Melvin Gordon himself came out and said that this coaching staff wants Javonte Williams to be the one.
Hmm.
So that's a huge statement from him. Not something that I would have expected him to say, but uh, I don't know why he would lie about that, right? So I think that that's a big endorsement for Javonte. He showed that he has the talent to be a fantastic running back when he's alone in the backfield. In the one game that Melvin Gordon wasn't there, he popped off for almost 30 points. And he looked really good even in the committee, being one of the most efficient backs in the NFL, having one of the highest force missed tackle rates in the NFL. Looked really good as a receiver as well. So I think that the upside is there if this split goes from like 50-50 from last year up to 60-40, maybe even 65-45.
No, I like that. 65-45. 65-35.
Oh, shit.
Hey,
Yeah,
110%.
my
We're
fault.
running the ball 110%.
Math ain't my strong suit. We're talking about fantasy here, brother.
Hey, there's a lot of stats. But no, I like that. That's actually like I didn't know that Melvin Gordon actually said that. That's a lot of humility coming from Melvin Gordon. That's not something I'd ever expect to hear out of his mouth, especially
Yeah,
after since we're coming from the days where the Melvin Gordon holdout to now it's, oh yeah, I'm ready to, not even that I'm ready to take a back seat, but at least that he can acknowledge, all right, I'm taking a little bit of a back seat and not complain about it or be mad about it or try to hold out or do any of that. So that's a lot of maturity from Melvin Gordon. That's actually awesome. However, at
sure.
13, slightly disagree. I have Javonte Williams a little bit lower, but I have Nick Chubb at my 13. So this is sort of going based off of what I said during like the AFC North breakdown. If you haven't watched that, check it out. Also, like, comment, subscribe, be a part of the community. But with Nick Chubb, I feel like in terms of just running backs and pure runners, Nick Chubb is one of the best pure runners in the league. And when you think about, oh, he's not going to have Deshaun Watson at quarterback, he's going to have Jacoby Brissett for the first couple weeks. A lot of people think about that downgrade in quarterbacks from Deshaun Watson to Jacoby Brissett, which we don't even know if it's a downgrade yet. Deshaun Watson was miserable in his preseason game, but that's a discussion for another day. It's more so we got to look at the downgrade from Baker Mayfield to Jacoby Brissett, which I don't believe is as big of a downgrade. At least Baker Mayfield coming off of last season into this season to Jacoby Brissett. I don't think it's that big of a tail off. In terms of the weapons around Nick Chubb, like the receiving weapons they have, also not super great. You've got Amari Cooper and then like Donovan Peoples Jones and just some other fringe people. So the level of talent around him has taken a little bit of a drop, but that's also with me saying that like they lost Odell last year, but they weren't really using Odell last year either. So with Nick Chubb, he's kind of proven that he's going to do what he's going to do as long as he's on the field, and this team will rely on him a lot. And I believe they're going to rely on him even more at the first half of the season without Deshaun Watson. And hopefully, when Deshaun Watson returns to the league and returns to form, he'll get even better. But you can't really count on Deshaun Watson, so you got to look at it from a Jacoby Brissett standpoint, and that's kind of how I feel on it. Is that Nick Chubb's that kind of guy who's going to get his regardless of who's back there at quarterback because he is that talented of a player.
Yeah. He's at my 14, so I'm not too far off with you. I agree with most of what you said. He's game script dependent, which is really the only thing that I worry about because he's not a pass catcher. So if the team is winning, then he's probably going to have himself a good game when they're going to be running a lot. They're going to run it a lot regardless, just because they don't have much of an option with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback and not too many talented receivers. But when they're down, they're going to have to throw the ball. He's not going to be as involved. That's when Kareem Hunt's going to come in and stuff like that and vulture a lot of the third down work and things of that nature. But yeah, he's probably the best pure rusher in the league. He's shown year in and year out that he's been a top 12 running back. I have him just outside of that. I think he's probably one of the safest picks in fantasy. Like he's not gonna bust. And if that's something that you're interested in, if that's the way that you want to play fantasy, then I think that that's a really good pick. Um, I don't think that if you look at our rankings and try to draft that way that you're going to be able to get him. I think his ADP is a little bit higher than that. I see him as running back 8. So if he's somebody that you are targeting, you're probably going to have to go earlier than what we're suggesting. But
Mhm.
I think that's mostly just because of a lack of upside. Just from an offensive perspective, they're not going to be in the red zone a ton. And like we talked about, a lack of receiving work.
It is something to also take note that I do have Nick Chubb this low just because if, and it's a big if, Deshaun Watson does play this season, he also is going to take away some of that rushing work as well because, as people know, Deshaun Watson, even though he hasn't played in the last year, he is a dual threat quarterback. So a lot of those goal line carries, a lot of those, could be vultured by Deshaun Watson. But it all remains to be seen. But it is an option. It is something that could happen. So that's something I took into account. And just because it is kind of a clean, well, no, we're at 14, right? At
Yes.
14, I have Aaron Jones, which
Okay.
I'm sort of echoing everything that you said. Aaron Jones has been honestly one of the more elite receiving running backs as well. He gets a lot of his work in the receiving game. He's also a great rusher. This team is taking a steep decline at the wide receiver position, which means that he's probably going to get a lot more work in the passing game. I probably should have him a little bit higher than he is, but that just kind of shows how high I am on everybody else that is above him. But that's not a knock towards Aaron Jones whatsoever as a talent. I think I have him not at ADP, but right below ADP because I think he is like the running back 13 right now,
Let me
and I have
check.
him valued at 14.
See, I'm looking on Fantasy Pros for half PPR scoring. I see him as the RB10 off the board.
RB10. Okay. Well, you're gonna have to use
But
draft
yeah, close.
capital. You're gonna have to use draft capital to get him. You're probably gonna value him a lot higher. People in your home leagues are probably gonna value him a lot higher. But no, Aaron Jones is a good fantasy option, a great fantasy option. That's why I'm at 14. And that's kind of rolling over into my 15, which you've also already mentioned, is Javonte Williams. I just think the opportunity is there. He's in an elite offense. Apparently, they want him to be the guy. I never saw that, but I believe you. I believe that you saw that. So if I had known that going into it, he'd probably be even higher. He'd probably be around where you had him. But that's not to say that I don't value Javonte Williams as a talent or as a player. I just kind of want to see how this team is going to work in practice. But if you were to grab him as early as you put him, or even just as early as he's going, it's not a bad investment. His ADP has sort of fallen since they said that him and Melvin Gordon were going to have a split, and news is coming out otherwise, so it remains to be seen if that's going to change again. But I am a big fan of Javonte Williams as a player. And just kind of
Yeah,
rolling from 15 into 16, I've got James Conner at 16. So we talked about this again yesterday. We talked about the NFC West. Again, you can check that video out. That's out on YouTube as well. But he's one of those guys who he's not very efficient. He had a lot of touchdown luck, but that doesn't change the fact that he is in an elite offense. You know? So the fact that the matter is people are saying he's not going to score as many touchdowns as he did last year, and he very well may not. But the fact that he is in an elite offense, they don't have Chase Edmonds anymore, so he is the number one. He is the guy. He's going to have all the opportunity to score those touchdowns, get those goal line carries. They want to try to preserve Kyler Murray a little bit more so his career can last longer, so they don't really want him having those goal line carries. So James Conner should also benefit from an uptick in goal line carries as well. And I don't know, I've always kind of had a soft spot for James Conner. He's not that same player that he was that first year that he got the chance to start in Pittsburgh. He's probably never going to be that same player again, but I can't discount him and say that he's not at least a viable fantasy option. And he's not in this caliber of good running backs in fantasy.
yeah. So I see you tried to skip me there. You went on to your 16 before I got to my 15.
Oh,
I see
snap.
your tactics. That's all right. That's all
That's
right.
my
It worked
bad.
out.
That's on me.
It
That's on
worked
me.
out because my 15 is also James Conner. So that's a good
Woo!
transition. Um, yeah, I feel the same way. I think that you do. Uh, Chase Edmonds is gone. The splits when Chase Edmonds was on the field versus when he was off for James Conner was a drastic difference. He was given so much more rushing so many more rushing attempts, but also more importantly, a lot of that receiving work that Chase Edmonds was taking before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see Eno Benjamin as really a threat to that. I don't really see Darrell Williams as even a threat to that. Cliff Kingsbury has been one to really go with like a workhorse running back. He doesn't like to go committee. So I think that James Conner is still going to get the majority of the carries, the majority of the receptions. Like you mentioned, this offense is legit. They're going to be lethal. They're going to be in the red zone a lot. So he's going to have an opportunity to repeat that same 15 touchdown total. I don't know that it's necessarily, you know, likely. I'm not necessarily predicting that he's going to reach that again, which is why I have him down here at 15 as opposed to in the top 10 where he finished last year. But I think that that upside is there. So I like him at 15. And then another guy that you've also already talked about that I have down at 16 is Ezekiel Elliott. I think that it's a similar situation to Aaron Jones, but not quite to the same extent, where you're missing a lot of the passing game or the passing options that you had in years past. Amari Cooper's gone, Michael Gallup's hurt. There's just not much behind CeeDee Lamb. And so he's going to be asked to catch a lot more passes this year. And I think that that's going to boost his fantasy value quite a bit. He has been on the decline a little bit. You can blame some of that on the PCL injury that he had last year, but I don't know. I do think that he's on probably a downward trajectory, but just from a season-long perspective in 2022, I think that he's going to be really serviceable. I think that he's going to get a lot of volume. And I'm not scared to draft him at ADP where he's going right now.
No, that's completely fair. I agree with that too. I think I have him at 12, so he is sort of that, I guess an RB1, sort of fringe RB1 candidate. High end RB2 for sure. Super high end RB2, which I feel like that's where you value Zeke as well in terms of that. So I think we fall on very similar pages. I just have him a little bit higher in terms of where I think he's going to finish. But I definitely agree with that. And rolling on into 17, which is these lists are always going to get really different towards the end.
Yeah.
But going towards number 17, I've got Elijah Mitchell from the 49ers. I feel like he's one of those guys that he's proven that they want to give him the volume. They want him to be the guy. The only thing that would drop him any lower in anybody's rankings would be, to me at least, would be health concerns because he is a smaller running back, more prone to getting hurt. But if you're looking at the situation and you're looking at how the team wants to use him, I think that he is the guy in this offense. He is the guy. He gets a lot of receiving work, which is actually surprising to me that they do have so many options, and they still did use him a lot in the passing game last year. That may come down now that they do have Jeff Wilson available for at the beginning of the season as opposed to towards the second half of it. But I do see that Elijah Mitchell, if he comes back fully healthy, like they're saying he is, I know he's dealing with a hamstring injury right now, but if he comes back fully healthy, I think he is the guy that's going to get the job, and he's going to be the one that they're essentially the new guy that the 49ers are going to be running into the ground because they do love to run the football. So I think Elijah Mitchell does have that at least top 15 potential, which is why I kind of have him right outside of it just because I am a little bit afraid of health concerns. But like we said with Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, we can't plan according to that. Just kind of got to look at the situation. So
Yeah. Yeah. I do like Elijah Mitchell. I do have him quite a bit lower on my rankings than you. Not trying to be an asshole either. You mentioned his usage in the passing game.
mm-hmm.
I'm looking at his stats right now. He had 20 targets, 19 receptions, and 1 touchdown.
But
I don't know that I would
but 19,
qualify that.
19 catches out of
good
20 targets usage. Is crazy. 19 catches.
I mean, sure.
I'm just saying,
rate is fantastic.
All I'm saying is he has proven at least that he can be involved in the passing game. I know it's going to come down because they have other options, but at the very least, we also have Trey Lance to kind of account for as well.
Right.
And you got Debo to account for as well. There's just a lot of people who can tote the ball, but I do feel like in terms of goal line touches, stuff like that, Elijah Mitchell will be the guy and he will get those looks. So he should get a lot of passes. We hope to see an uptick in receiving work. I think we will, but as Eric said, he's right. He's completely right. He wasn't really the guy to be catching passes out the backfield. But, out of 11 games with 20 targets, I can't really be mad at that either.
That's fair. This is the fantasy football busters after all. I do have to bust your balls every once in a while. I like what you got to say about Elijah Mitchell. I don't hate him. I'm just a little bit lower on him than you. That's all. So
Just wait till you
another
hear
thing,
wait till you hear my next one.
uh, we'll see. We'll see where we go with that. But another thing to note with him is that he's currently dealing with a hamstring issue, which scares me. Soft tissue injuries, as we're getting closer to the season, that tend to linger, especially with a guy like Elijah Mitchell that struggled to stay on the field. But we'll talk about that more when I get to him. My last running back of kind of this few tiers where I feel comfortable having them as my RB2 if I'm going RB heavy is Travis Etienne.
Okay.
I really, really liked Etienne as a prospect. He's got prototypical size at 5'10", 215. He was the most productive running back in ACC history, and in his last 2 years at Clemson, he caught 37 passes and 48 passes, respectively, which is just elite receiving numbers for any college running back to have. So I think he's the total package. Also, I was listening to the Establish the Run podcast. Shout out to them. You guys should really go listen to it. It's a fantastic podcast. Tons of great information. They were talking about his preseason usage this past weekend. Trevor Lawrence played 25 snaps, and Etienne was in for 22 of them. He got all 6 of the third down snaps, and he got all 5 of the snaps inside the 10. So it seems like the Jaguars are showing a willingness to use him as a workhorse. That touch volume will probably come down if J-Rob comes back healthy. I'm sure that they're going to want to mix him in. But it makes me feel better about Etienne, knowing that the Jaguars don't just see him as like a gadget guy or, a weapon. He's like actually a workhorse running back that they can use in that fashion if they want to. We'll just see what happens with J-Rob coming back from the Achilles.
I 100% agree with that sentiment, and I'll talk more about Travis Etienne because he did make my list. He's just a little bit later. But I did agree with all that sentiment. I think that the Jaguars have sort of proven at this point that even though they're not a good team, they can still produce good fantasy players. And as J. Rob has shown us that for the last 2 years, we value Travis Etienne as an even better talent, so it should be an even better. So rolling into my 18, and this is going to be a hot take, a little bit spicy. I've got Rashad Penny from the Seahawks.
Ooh.
I've got Rashad Penny from the
Yo.
Seahawks.
Okay.
I think that, and again, we're accounting for him staying on the field. This is us saying Rashad Penny is going to play at the very least, 12 games this season, getting on the field playing. It was kind of awesome watching him play. He was one of the most efficient running backs in the league last year towards that last stretch that he was playing. The team has shown that they want him to be the workhorse running back of this team. There was some news that came out yesterday about Kenneth Walker that was a little bit concerning to me as well from Pete Carroll. As people know, or if you don't know, I need you to take account of this right now, that Pete Carroll is one of the most enthusiastic, injury optimistic coaches in the league. He would tell you that a player with a broken neck will be back before the season ends, which he pretty much did last year with Chris Carson. Yeah.
Yes.
He said over and over again with Chris Carson last year, starting at week 10, that he'd be back soon.
Something like that.
And he just kept saying it over and over again. And as you see, Chris Carson is retired. He's never going to see the field again. So I would discount any news that you hear from Pete Carroll.
Can I give you the direct quote? Because I thought it was fucking hilarious.
Oh, bro, you can give us the direct quote because that shit was hilarious.
You texted it to me yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Said Pete Carroll, quote, Ken's got a little hernia thing that he's working on, and we've got to get through that. So I don't know what to tell you yet, but it's something that we can attend to and all that. Thanks, Pete. Thanks. What the fuck does that mean?
Did you see his quotes from today about it?
About him going in for the procedure?
Yeah. Said he was. So he said that he was undergoing a procedure, but the team has said it's not a sports hernia anymore.
Okay.
Right? And then the next one they had was Pete Carroll says it's not a core muscle injury, but wouldn't specify what it is. Says he thinks Walker will be back by week 1.
He has no idea what's going on.
He has literally no clue. He's got no idea. He's just out there saying shit, which is kind of hilarious because that's always how Pete Carroll's been. If you've ever paid attention to the news coming from Pete Carroll, this is just how he is. So with that sort of discount on Kenneth Walker and just what's going on with him, because that does not give me a lot of confidence in Kenneth Walker. But what we do know is Rashad Penny, he was dealing with a groin injury earlier in the week. He's already a full participant in practice again. And he's just kind of shown that he was drafted in the first round at the end of the first round. and he hasn't been able to stay on the field since. But when he is on the field, you can see why he was a first round talent because he is that running back. He is a good running back. He's a great running back. It's just a matter of if he can stay on the field. And I know we don't account for injuries. And I know I said earlier, I'm trying to stay as optimistic as I can, but it is an issue when you've only played, what, 6 games in the last 2 years?
It's I don't have the numbers in
It's
front of me, but yeah, it's been
it's
very few.
it's abysmal. But when he is on the field, actually no, in the last 2 years he's played 13 games.
Yeah.
But still,
He
that's
played
13 games in 2 years. He's averaging 6.5 in the last two
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
But I think that he is one of those guys. He is a great talent, and Pete Carroll loves his workhorse running backs. The Seahawks are going to be ass, so they're going to be probably leaning on the run game until they're down a lot, and then they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. He's also proven that he's not like a receiving running back. They'll throw him the ball every once in a while. I think he got 8 targets in 10 games. He's not irrelevant when it comes to receiving, but he's not. It's not something you really count on for Rashad Penny. But I do think that rushing upside really is there. I think he is, when he's on the field, an elite runner. It just stands to be seen if he can sustain that through a season. But I do like Rashad Penny a lot. You're not going to get him at this price. He's going to be way lower. But this is just where I value him at.
Yeah, it takes some big cojones to rank him at 18, and I like it. I like it. I think that the upside is probably there. He definitely showed that last season with that 6 game stretch at the end of the year as the overall RB1 in that time. So props to you for having the balls to put him there. I'm not quite as brave as you are, but I really like that call.
Appreciate
Um,
that.
at my 18, I have Brees Hall.
Okay.
I had him. So I want to clarify, right? We've talked through these first 17 running backs. I have a pretty big gap after Travis Etienne and between the remainder of these running backs for me. As far as draft strategy, I'm probably looking to target these mid-round receivers, tight ends. If you want to pick an early quarterback, then this is probably the time to do it. After my list of 17, I'm not sure exactly how your tiers are going to work out if you want to talk about that as well. But these are guys that I'm looking, if they're still available later on in the draft, then I'm hoping they fall to me. But if not, not a big deal. So specifically about Brees Hall, he's just one of the most athletic running backs that we've seen come out of college of all time, really, or at least in recent history. I believe he is with Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and Travis Etienne as like some of the only running backs to be given like a perfect relative athletic score. So he's in elite company there. He's looked really good throughout training camp so far. My concern and the reason that I have him outside of that Travis Etienne tier is because of this most recent preseason game that we talked about in one of our last divisional breakdowns. Is that he was on the field for only 2 of the snaps with Zach Wilson, while Michael Carter was on the field for 7 of those. Also, in an ETR podcast that I was listening to, they did kind of expand upon that because Zach Wilson left early with injury, and so the starters remained on the field, I believe, for a total of 20 snaps, and so it looked more even than 7-2. It was like 10-10 with Michael Carter versus Brees Hall, so that's a little bit more encouraging. But Michael Carter does look to be really involved. He did start with the first team offense. He came out first, so that's my concern. But I think that as the offseason goes on and as we get further into the season, really into like weeks 4, 5, 6, I think we'll see Brees Hall really emerge as the best back in that backfield just from a talent perspective. I think he does just about everything better than Michael Carter, and he's bigger, more durable. So I think he's going to probably supplant him fairly early on, and that's going to lead to pretty high upside for him. Unfortunately, he's in the Jets offense, which isn't super high powered. So that's another thing you got to consider. But that's why I have him down here at 18.
No, that's a fair assessment. Yeah, I'm pretty big on Brees Hall too, as well. I actually have him at my number 19. So I have my number 19. I believe in the talent. I believe in the profile. It just remains to be seen with the Jets. But I do believe that this Jets team is going to be one of the better ones that we've seen in very, very, in extremely recent history. Just in terms of, I don't think we've ever seen. Actually, no. Our early years, we've seen the Jets be somewhat competent. But we've also seen a lot of very, very incompetent Jets coaching and just management with Adam Gase and that whole era. So now that
Yeah.
we're in sort of the Robert Salah era, where last year they weren't a good team, but they also just dealt with a lot of injuries. The team just wasn't very good. The players weren't very good, but they have a lot of talent that has been developing over the years that's going to blow up. And I think Brees Hall has landed into a very good situation where he's going to be one of the guys. But like you said, they use Michael Carter a good bit in the preseason. You got to take that into account. But I feel like this is going to be one of those situations where Michael Carter might get the nod to start off the season, and then Brees Hall is slowly going to, well, not even slowly, might even be fast. But Brees Hall is going to end up being the guy on this team. I'm very confident in saying that before this season is out, he will be the guy. So that's why I have Brees Hall as high. I had seen a statistic from, I believe it was Mike Clay from ESPN, but he had said, I'm just going to read it out word for word. A workload of approximately 240 touches is what Mike Clay projects, and that's how many touches the cumulative Jets RB1s averaged last season. And if Brees Hall were to get that same amount of touches, you can project that he would be somewhere in the top 15 just based off of those numbers. So if you just look at that and look at the prospect that is Brees Hall, he's going to be a decent fantasy option, barring anything crazy happening, but I think he's going to end up being the guy here, and yeah, he's just somebody you can be kind of confident in. It's just going to take some time. So if you want that early season boom, Brees Hall probably not the guy, but someone who's going to carry you through the second half of the fantasy season and into the fantasy playoffs, I very much believe Brees Hall will be that player.
Yeah, I think with him, it's strictly a matter of opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
whether they give him the workload or not. He's got the talent to be fantastic when given the workload. I think that's a question at all. So that moves us on to 19. I have Cam Akers in this slot, and it definitely scares me. A lot of these guys past Brees Hall scare me. There's a lot of question marks in this kind of running back dead zone territory. Um, but I really, really liked Akers coming out of Florida State as a prospect. I thought he was fantastic as a pass catcher. I thought he was a phenomenal athlete. He showed that he did have some things to work on when it came to vision and patience behind the offensive line, but I think that those are things that can be improved with coaching. And he showed once he got to the NFL and they gave him the opportunity in that second half of his rookie year that he could explode. Like he looked really, really good. He had some very, very usable fantasy weeks at the end of, what was that, 2020?
Yep.
Um, and then in the offseason last year, he tears his Achilles, has the crazy comeback in 5 months, makes it back to the playoffs, and just looks terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say whether that's just going to be him now, whether that's because he came back too early and he didn't have all that same explosion that maybe he'll still regain. I don't have all the answers there, and part of me questioning that is why I have him as low as I do. I think as a talent, he deserves to be a lot higher, but from the kind of risk averse position that I'm coming from, I can't see myself drafting him much higher than 19.
No, that's completely fair. I can definitely see that. And I guess with that one, we're both kind of rolling over into that 20 spot because I did already say my 19. We're rolling over in the 20, and I guess spoilers if you were paying attention earlier. Travis Etienne makes my top 20. The only reason I have him here at 20 is purely because he's on the Jaguars. But with that being said, the talent that he is, the player that he is, I think he's going to do a lot better than this 20 spot. I think he actually is going to do a lot better. But the one thing that I took into account in terms of him being a good prospect, I know a lot of people are worried because he's coming off this lens frac injury, this and that. He could have played at the end of last season. The team chose not to play him because there was no reason to play him. They were a terrible team, so there's no need risking your assets. And at the same time, Travis Etienne, we know he's a great receiving back, as Eric listed earlier, which means he's going to get a good amount of receiving work as well. And the one thing I kind of keep hammering over and over again is sort of these quarterback to skill positions chemistry in terms of who played together in college. And these guys just played together, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, they practiced on the same team last year, even though Travis Etienne didn't play. He was still there with the team, practicing in the preseason, not the preseason, the mini camp, training camp, all of that until he got hurt. So to say that Travis Etienne isn't in a good spot, at least with the people he's got around him and who trust him, it'd be kind of stupid to say that. He's going to get all the opportunity in the world. It just remains to be seen what he does with it and what the Jaguars are able to do with it. But with Doug Peterson, I do have faith because Doug Peterson, he is good at installing new offenses, and God knows that the Jaguars need it because I don't know what the hell Urban Meyer was teaching them. He probably had Trevor Lawrence playing Madden to prepare for games. He didn't even, it, it's a quick tangent. I cannot believe that Urban Meyer did not know who Aaron Donald was. If you guys are wondering how bad this Jaguars offense was when Urban Meyer was the head coach, he did not know who NFL superstars were. Like, he would be out there on the sidelines of a game and say, hey, that number 99 guy on the Rams is pretty good. Who is that? Who is Aaron Donald? It blows my mind. So the team has nowhere to go but up from there, in my opinion. So the fact that James Robinson was here with this team before he tore his Achilles and was able to be an effective running back shows that Travis Etienne has an even higher ceiling than James Robinson ever really did in this offense. So that's sort of my 2 cents on Travis Etienne.
Yeah. Yeah, like we had to say, I totally forgot to even mention the Liz Frank injury, actually. That's how much I care about it. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
totally recovered. All of the Twitter injury doctors and stuff that I've followed don't seem to be worried about his recovery. He seems like he's totally back to 100%. So locked and loaded for this season. That leads me into my number 20, which is J.K. Dobbins. He's, again, it's going to be a theme with the rest of these running backs on the list. He's somebody that I'm nervous about. He's coming back off of a pretty serious knee injury. He tore his ACL. I believe he also tore, I don't know if it was his LCL or PCL, but there was another ligament that was also torn in the same injury. So his recovery timetable has been pushed back pretty dramatically. He's still, I don't think, practicing in full. He has been activated off the PUP for the Ravens and is at training camp, but I don't think he's running in team drills yet. So we want to see that happen sooner rather than later. I think the upside is just there. He's always been a crazy efficient running back dating back to college, and it's hard not to be an efficient running back in an offense as potent as the Ravens with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, right? They're gonna run the ball a ton. He's gonna get a lot of opportunity if he's healthy. And when you have that threat of Lamar Jackson, pulling it on zone reads or whatever, like you can't stack the box specifically for J.K. Dobbins. You have to account for both. And so I think that leads to a lot of big explosive plays that you see from this Ravens offense and specifically for J.K. Dobbins. So I like his upside there. I'm worried about the risk with the injury, but we'll continue to monitor that as the offseason goes on. And then that leads me into my number 21 running back, which you've already brought up, who is Elijah Mitchell. I think this is another run-heavy team with a rushing quarterback, so a lot of those same sentiments that I just mentioned from J.K. Dobbins kind of pass over here for Elijah. I just don't think that he's quite as talented as Dobbins. He's also dealing with injury. He's got the hamstring injury that he's dealing with right now. But I think that he's going to get every opportunity to be that number one for the 49ers again this year, the same as he was the last season. And he showed to be very effective in that role. He's limited in the passing game, like I was mentioning earlier.
All right, all right.
Being an asshole. Now I'm trying to be an asshole.
All right.
But
all right.
I don't see a super high ceiling because I think that Trey Lance is going to take a lot of that red zone work, a lot of those red zone carries, touchdown opportunities from him. So I don't think he's going to have the same touchdown numbers as he did last season. But he's still got high potential in a high-powered offense that's going to run the ball a lot. So he's my 21.
Okay. And I actually have J.K. Dobbins at my 21 for a lot of the same sentiments you had. I'm a little bit more concerned injury-wise just because he is 1 year removed from this ACL tear. We've seen how running backs look 1 year removed, and not to say he's going to be bad, but to say that I'm just kind of curtailing my expectations because I do believe that when J.K. Dobbins is healthy, I believe that when he's healthy, he's a top 15 option in fantasy. But the fact he's coming off of that, he's in the offense that he's in, and I'm just kind of interested to see how this offense really works. But Lamar always kind of makes it work, so at the same time, it's not a huge concern. But I do like J.K. Dobbins as a prospect. I liked him in college. Yeah, the only real concern I have is injury concerns, and again, we're not planning for that. So with that being there, I think his production will come down as a result of him coming off of that ACL injury. But to say that the talent isn't there would be a mistake. You know,
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Um, so for me, my number 22 is David Montgomery. Um, Another guy, I'm not worried about injury here, so that's a positive. But there's not too many positives after that. The Bears offense might be the worst in the league. We'll see. They're going to be competing for it. Um, and it seems like the new coaching staff has really given more respect to Khalil Herbert. It sounds like they have seen what he can do and want to get him more involved. I'm not sure that it's going to be like a full split committee. I think David Montgomery is still going to be the lead back for sure, but I don't think he's going to have the same volume that he had last year. I do like that he has shown the ability to catch passes out of the backfield. Um, Khalil Herbert definitely isn't a pass catcher, so I don't think he's going to steal from him in that role. And that might be important considering they don't really have any receivers outside of Darnell Mooney. He might have to be a big target for them. So there is upside there, I guess, in that perspective, especially if you're in like a PPR league or something like that. He's going to catch some passes out of the backfield, but there's also some question marks with that, considering Justin Fields is a rushing quarterback, and they typically don't check it down as much. Tough to say a ton of positive things here about David Montgomery, which is exactly why I have him down as low as I do.
I actually do 100% agree with you. I have David Montgomery at my 22 spot as well. He was kind of wildly inefficient last year. And something that you do have to take into account, like you said, they have a whole new regime there. So it's like when you got a whole new coaching staff, they don't really have a whole lot of ties and a whole lot of loyalty to players because they weren't the players that they brought in. They're just sort of making what they've got work. So one thing that's important to note is the new offensive coordinator, Luke Getzey, right? Luke Getzey. Let me see.
Yep.
Yep, Luke
Mm-hmm.
Getzey, who comes from Green Bay, and that scares me a little bit because if he's coming from Green Bay, this is the same dude who was one of the coaches for Aaron Jones back when everybody was saying, "Hey, free Aaron Jones. He needs more than the 60% snap share." So
Yep.
it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's easy to say that he's going to keep that same sort of pattern going, but that is something that he does prefer is not running his running backs into the ground and sort of spreading things out and showing different looks. And when it comes to Khalil Herbert, like you brought up, he was very efficient last year. He was one of the most efficient running backs in the league. So when you got a new regime, you're looking at two running backs, one of them wildly inefficient with a lot of volume, one of them very inefficient or very efficient with the higher vol or with the lower volume. It's just I feel like he's going to come in and try to mitigate that somewhere in between. So David Montgomery definitely doesn't really have that top 10 potential, but he will still be a serviceable fantasy option, which is why I have him listed at 22.
Yeah. I I do think I don't have it in front of me, so maybe I'm bullshitting, but I think he started out the season pretty hot and was running fairly efficiently, and then he sustained an injury, which is why Khalil Herbert ended up filling in for him for those few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't quite look the same coming back from that injury. So
Okay.
I'm not necessarily worried about him from an efficiency standpoint or as a talent. I think he still has it. It's just not a good offense and potentially in a committee.
Hey, the Bears
Um,
coaching staff said they were impressed with Justin Fields, whatever that means. So
That is true.
that is it.
I hope they're impressed with him. I have him on my dynasty team. Hopefully, he's looking a little bit better this year. We'll see.
See, I got one of his rookie
Um,
cards over there sleeved. I'm betting on Justin
hey,
Fields, but
yeah,
I actually have some Justin
Justin
Herbert
Herbert would be a
rookie.
better
I
bet.
actually do have some Justin Herbert rookie cards. I have to show them to you.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's some valuable shit right there.
Oh yeah.
So that takes us to RB23. I have Josh Jacobs. Again, not super excited about it. I do think the hate went a little too far after he started the preseason game and got like a ton of snaps. Um, I think most people wanted to see him sit, but I think that that was also just a new coaching staff coming in and wanting to see what they have in all of their running backs. It would have been different if we saw Josh Jacobs go out and play and then Zamir White, the new rookie, having sat, right? Like that would have been concerning. But all of the running backs got plenty of play that game. So I don't see that as big of a deal as people made it out to be. Um, I am nervous with Josh McDaniels coming over that he's going to implement the same type of running back by committee approach that he had in New England. They've already talked about establishing like a singular third down back, which isn't going to be Josh Jacobs. And then, like I mentioned, Zamir White comes in, and so they're probably going to be splitting, at least to a degree, that first and second down work. So his workload is going to be severely diminished from years past. He's already shown a little bit of difficulty with staying on the field, injury wise. So we'll see if he can stay healthy. He still has a little bit of upside. I think that this offense as a whole takes an uptick, and they're going to be in a very competitive division. They're going to need to keep up and score a lot of points. So it's possible that he has more red zone opportunities. He could score more touchdowns, but I'm definitely nervous going into 2022 about Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. As I've said, I believe before, I've never really been a huge Josh Jacobs truther, but at the same time, like you said, the disrespect is a lot because when he does play, he is pretty good. He just has some injury concerns. He's got this. He didn't pick up his player option going into the season, so the team is sort of giving him this kind of last chance too to earn a contract. So he
Yeah.
kind of has to come out here and ball. So I do agree with that sentiment, but that's kind of getting ahead of myself. So for my 23, this is where I actually had Cam Akers. He fell quite a bit for me down to this spot just because of all the recent news. And Sean McVay could very well make me look like an asshole with just everything that he's been saying because the way I've seen it is that he and Darrell Henderson are going to be splitting things right down the middle. So with that being said, if he's splitting it right down the middle, he's somewhere like an RB2, low end RB2 to just mid RB2. So I did have to pull him down here. I would like to see that explosiveness come back this year. I think if that does take that huge step back up and he does get back to the player he was his rookie year, I'm eating crow on this statement. He's going to end up being a much better running back, and he is going to get the nod from Sean McVay. It's not what we've heard yet. It's not what I believe yet. So it's just something that, I say this a lot, but it remains to be seen. But this is where I value him at right here. So if he were to fall to me at this spot, I'd gladly take him. But before that, I got a little bit of reservations.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. That was something that I forgot to mention when I was talking about him as well. Is that split with Darrell Henderson? Darrell has also shown to be a very good runner, a very efficient runner when he's been given the opportunity. So uh, I don't know that Cam Akers is going to steal that outright from him if they do want to make this a committee. So I might also look into moving him down just a little bit. And then we get into the last of our list. My number 24 is going to be AJ Dillon. I think that for a lot of the same reasons that I hyped up Aaron Jones, they're the same reasons that you should be hyped about AJ Dillon. They've already talked about how they want to get him involved in the passing game as well, and how they're going to have him and Aaron Jones on the field at the same time. So even if they are in a committee, even if they are splitting work, like they can be on the field and both be productive at the same time. He's probably going to be getting the nod this year, and he even did last year when it comes to like red zone carries.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be getting a lot of those touchdown opportunities when they get down to the goal line. He's going to get some of the receiving opportunities out of the backfield. And he's shown also just a propensity for them to want to give him the ball when it gets late in the season, when it starts getting cold and they want to go ground and pound. AJ Dillon is the guy. And then the reason that I think he's probably a value here is because if Aaron Jones goes down, which he's had a little bit of an injury history in the past, I think AJ Dillon skyrockets up the rankings into a potential top 10, maybe even top 5 guy with the amount of volume that he's going to get. I don't want to project that. Aaron Jones, fingers crossed, he stays healthy the whole season and he balls out as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if something were to happen to him, AJ Dillon is fantasy gold here at RB24.
I 100% mirror that sentiment. I also have AJ Dillon listed here. I was going back and forth between him and Josh Jacobs, but then I landed on pretty much where you ended at, where when it starts to get cold out, it's bad weather. AJ Dillon is getting the nod, and he can carry the team like that. Like we've seen him do it several times at this point. And the fact that he got 37 targets last year, I think 34 receptions, and they're saying they want to get him
right.
more involved. It's only good news. So
Yeah.
it was that.
Yeah.
Okay.
37 targets, 34 receptions.
Okay. So yeah, AJ Dillon, he's a smash at the 20 RB24 spot. if he falls to you, I think where is his overall ADP at? I think his overall ADP is somewhere in the fifth round.
I'm seeing him at RB 25, uh,
But in terms of
54th overall. So let me see if I can do the math real quick. 4 divided by 12. That puts him in like the middle of the fourth.
middle of the fourth.
I don't I don't know whether to trust fantasy pros when it comes to these overall rankings. A lot of times that's kind of a little out of whack, but
Yeah.
I think middle of the fourth might be a little bit too rich for my blood.
I think
I don't know if
he's a fifth or sixth round pickup, that's a smash.
yeah,
Middle of the
yeah,
fourth, I try to go for somebody else. Maybe even there's a lot of wide receivers going in that round. A lot of elite quarterbacks going in the fourth. But when it comes to AJ Dillon, if he falls to you in the fifth or sixth, I think it's an absolute smash. He's a beast. He's been very sturdy throughout his whole career so far. And like you've said, this whole offense has sort of taken this step where now they need to rely so heavily on the running backs group that they're going to be using these two guys a lot. So that only stands to benefit the two of them. And then Aaron Rodgers is going to do what he does, man, at the end of the day. But it's just I've always liked AJ Dillon, even from the quad pictures, the people him showing like,
Quadzilla.
yeah, look how big his quads are. But that just kind of goes to show that he is built very sturdy, and it kind of gets into what I talked about in the NFC East breakdown, where like Saquon doesn't really run like his body type. AJ Dillon 100% runs like his body type, and he owns it. So I think that's a reason why he's been able to be as durable as he is and be as effective as he is. And I can't doubt the talent that's there. I can't doubt the opportunity. So he's got to break into my top 24.
Yeah, love that. Total agreement. That wraps up our top 24 running back rankings. It was a little bit of a longer positional rankings episode, but we had to get through 24 of these guys. If you stuck with us till the end, we appreciate you. Thank you very much for sticking with us.
Mm-hmm.
I was really excited to talk about running backs today. I think it's the most important position in fantasy. And so I'm glad that we had some disagreements. It was nice to be able to kind of chop it up with you there. But as always, most of what we talked about, I think we were pretty much in lockstep. So is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up today?
Nothing else. There's just there's still plenty of players outside this top 24, so you're gonna make sure you want to do your research. There's a lot of hidden gems still hidden beyond this top 24, but we probably didn't mention them because we aren't sure about the situations or the consistency, like like a Chase Edmonds or anyone of that caliber. So if they are in our top 24, that does not mean completely disregard them. It just means that just do your research, and you're kind of throwing darts. So just do your research and be careful. But like Eric said, we appreciate you for listening. If you made it this far, we love you. Please like, comment, subscribe, be a part of the community. Check down in the description. There will be a link to the Discord if you want to be able to join that and be a part of the community and chat with us. We're more than willing to just chop it up with some people about some fantasy football because, as Eric knows, this is something we talk about year round. It's not just during the season. So
All the time, baby. All the time.
yeah, we live, breathe, and eat this shit. So eat this shit. So thank you for listening. Thank you for just being a part of this. And peace.
Yeah, peace out.